Today's video is St. Albert the Great and accusations of misogyny attributed to him in his work. There is a quote that is presented by some journalists like Salon.com, academics, memes, and feminists to demonstrate Christianity has a long history of misogyny. It is attributed to St. Albert the Great. Let's go to the Salon.com's website. So the citation is made here, and this journalist, or whoever they claim to be, it's originally from Alternet, and you could actually read at the bottom who actually wrote this article. But anyway, they go through Christian history with a bunch of conveniently non-sourced quotes, only citing the name of the author and what they did and roughly the time frame they lived in, going from the early church to modern day evangelical Christianity for whatever reason. Conveniently, no quotes cited, just as any good internet quote. But anyway, the quote in question is this here. Quote, "Woman is a misbegotten man, and has a faulty and defective nature in comparison to his. Therefore she is unsure in herself. What she cannot get she seeks to obtain through lying and diabolical deceptions. And so, to put it briefly, one must be on one's guard with every woman, as if she were a poisonous snake and a horned devil." Ellipse. Thus, in evil and perverse doings, woman is cleverer, that is, slyer than man. Her feelings drive woman toward every evil, just as reason impels man toward every good. Saint Albertus Magnus, Dominican theologian, 13th century. So yes, he was a 13th century theologian. He was a bishop. But that's probably all this is good for, because of course there's no citation. Fortunately, searching the quote, one author did cite his source. Sadly, it is obvious he did not read the context. The quote is roughly taken from Questiones super de animalibus 15, question 11. The name of the writing properly in English is Questions Concerning on Animals, or more specifically, Aristotle's on Animals. First, it should be noted that Albert the Great's Questions Concerning on Animals was not written by St. Albert himself. The modern introduction to his work states the following. So let's go to, this is actually the translation provided. You can go to the Google link I provided you. And it actually tells you who actually wrote this work. It starts off on page 5. In addition to his commentary De Animalibus, which is a different work altogether, however, we have another work attributed to Albert the Great under the title Questiones super de animalibus, Questions Concerning on Animals. This text represents a series of disputed questions on Aristotle's De Animalibus, conducted in Cologne in 1258 and preserved in the report of Conrad of Austria from perhaps about the year 1260. Historians had long known of this work from medieval catalogues until 1922, however, it was thought to be lost to us. In 1922, a manuscript containing the Questiones was discovered in the Milanese Biblioteca Ambrosiana. Additional manuscripts containing this work or fragments of it were uncovered between 1932 and 1952 in other libraries. Critical editions of the Latin text was preserved by Ephraim Philfoot and appeared in 1955 in volume 12 of the Opera Omnia, Alberti Magni, in preparation in Cologne. In one sense, the Questiones super de animalibus, QDA, can be viewed as a useful companion piece to Albert's commentary on De Animalibus. It represents Albert's attempt to introduce Aristotle's material to students in Cologne in his lectures during the year 1258. As such, QDA antedates his slightly later and lastly larger commentary De Animalibus, although Albert did write down his commentary on De Animalibus. Indeed, Stadler's Latin edition is based on an autographed copy. Albert did not himself write down these lectures that form QDA, and this presents the historian with the interesting problem. Although attributed to Albert the Great, the work is in fact a reportatio, that is, it contains what Albert taught about Aristotle's book on animals in Cologne in 1258, but the QDA itself represents the notes of Albert's student Conrad of Austria, who heard Albert teaching. A few years later, these questions were collected and redacted. Albert the Great can be considered the author of the work, but his imprint on the work is indirect rather than direct and is mediated by Conrad of Austria. This means that one cannot properly distinguish the words of Albert from the words of the one reporting them. In addition, insofar as the text presents a semi-scholastic series of disputed questions based on Aristotle's De Animalibus, with a question posed, followed in instances by evidence pro et contra, and sometimes of response or solution to the question, neither is it always a simple matter to identify Albert's own position on a given question or to distinguish Albert's doctrine from other contemporary sources for his discussion on this material. And then they even say who Conrad of Austria was remains a thorny problem. So that is a huge issue right here. In short, the work is by Conrad, a student of Albert, and is based on the lectures of Albert, but the thoughts of Albert and Conrad cannot be distinguished. Since it's based on Albert's lectures, the work is attributed to St. Albert. What St. Albert's position was is unclear. Perhaps investigating the work actually written by him on animals might give us a clue. Going back to reading the section cited reveals major problems with the quote. It's a hypothetical argument posed to St. Albert and not his own thoughts on the subject. As noted in the introduction, the format is similar to scholastics such as St. Thomas Aquinas in his Summa: question, evidence for and against, then a solution. This book is primarily about science as it was understood in the Middle Ages, so it contains a lot of error. It is not meant to be primarily a theological work, but rather more philosophical and biological as understood by the time. The whole question reads as follows: whether the male is suited for proper behavior more than the female. One inquires further whether the male is better suited for proper behavior than the female. It seems not, so this is the first point, argument put forth. And it seems not, for an animal that is more teachable for proper behavior is more suitable, but according to the philosopher in the beginning of the 9th book, the female is more teachable toward proper behavior than the male, and it seems to be because of the argument that the female resemble children, according to the philosopher in this chapter. But children are more teachable than old people, as the philosopher wishes in the 2nd book of the Ethics, therefore, and so on. Second, in addition, prudence is an intellectual virtue. Without it, moral virtue cannot be perfected. But females are more prudent than males, as the philosopher wishes, therefore, and so on. The opposite is stated in the 9th book of his work, and is more clear, for generally, proverbially, and commonly, it is affirmed that the woman is more mendacious and fragile, more diffident, and more shameless, more deceptively eloquent, and in brief, a woman is nothing but a devil fashioned into a human appearance. Thus I saw one like this at Cologne, who seemed to be a saint, and yet, in brief, ensnared everyone with her love. To this, one must reply that a female is less suited for proper behavior than a male, for a woman's complexion is moister than a male's, but it belongs to a moist complexion to receive impressions easily, but to retain them poorly. For moisture is easily immobile, and this is why women are inconstant and always seeking after new things. Therefore, when she is engaged in the act under one man, she, at the very moment she wishes, were it possible, to lie under another. Therefore, therefore there is no faithfulness in a woman. Believe me, if you believe her, you will be deceived. Believe a teacher who has experienced it. Moreover, an indication of this is that the wise men almost never disclose their plans and their doings to their wives, for a woman is a flawed male, and in comparison to the male, has a nature of defect and privation, and And this is why, naturally, she mistrusts herself. And this is why, whatever she cannot acquire on her own, strives to acquire through mendacity and diabolic deception. Therefore, to speak briefly, one must be mistrustful of everyone as if of a venomous serpent and a horned devil. And if it were allowed to say what I knew about women, it would stupefy the entire world. And then, so those are the statements and the evidence for and against. And then what we have here is the responses, the answers. So there's an answer to the first point and an answer to the second point. So let's go to the second point, because that actually deals with the second point. To the second argument, I will reply that a woman is not more prudent than a male, properly speaking, but she is cleverer. Therefore, prudence smacks of good, and cleverness smacks of evil. Therefore, the woman is more prudent, that is, cleverer, than the male with respect to evil and perverse deeds, because the more nature departs from the one operation, the more it inclines towards the other. In this way, the woman falls short in intellectual operations, which consist in the apprehension of the good and knowledge of the truth and flight from evil. This is why one inclines the evil inclinations more to the sensitive appetite, unless she is ruled by reason, as is apparent in the 7th book of the Ethics. Therefore, sense moves the female to every evil, just as intellect moves a man to every good. And this is why, and so on. So, as we see, the original quote provided by the anonymous citation was an argument provided by the questioner. Then an ellipse was placed that skipped to St. Albert's supposed response to the claim. The writer's views are not without problem themselves, saying that women are generally less intelligent and are more they're more inclined to cleverness for evil purposes. The statements, however, about venomous, them being like venomous serpents, horned devils, and so on, are part of an argument that is responded to. Whether St. Albert the Great actually said anything about this, or what part of this is his, is completely uncertain. Though it is pretty funny that whoever was saying this claimed to have experience with a woman that was pretty evil. But again, who said what, we'll never probably ever know. Conclusion. So this is actually St. Albert the Great's student's work based on the lectures of the saint. We can't distinguish between his what St. Albert said and what the student said. We don't know that they agreed on everything, and we don't know who said what. So it's kind of a non-starter to even use this quote, because it's not even St. Albert the Great's own work. So anyway, this is Abraham Selassie, the Orthodox Catholic one on YouTube.